The massive alien ship appeared suddenly in Earth's orbit on a quiet Tuesday morning in 2089. It was 3 miles long and shaped like a curved blade. Fighter jets scrambled from bases around the world, but everyone knew they would be useless against such advanced technology. Admiral Kate Wright stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiant, Earth's flagship vessel. At 52, she had gray streaks in her short brown hair and eyes that had seen too many conflicts. Now those eyes watched the alien ship with a mixture of wonder and worry. "Any response to our messages?" she asked her communications officer. "Yes, Admiral. They're sending coordinates for a meeting. They'd want to talk." 6 hours later, Admiral Wright sat at a large round table in a United Nations conference room in New York. World leaders and military officials filled the chairs around her. A hushed silence fell over the room as the doors opened. The alien that walked in stood 7 feet tall. It had green scales, yellow eyes with vertical pupils, and moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible for its size. 2 human-shaped robots flanked it, clearly serving as guards. "I am Zelkor, representative of the Galactic Hegemony," the alien said in perfect English. Its voice had a strange musical quality. "We have been observing your planet for some time." Secretary General Paul Baker, a tall man with dark skin and a calm demeanor, stepped forward. "We welcome you to Earth. We hope this meeting begins a friendship between our worlds." Zelkor's mouth formed what might have been a smile, showing rows of small, sharp teeth. "The hegemony does not seek friendship. We seek order. We bring civilization to primitive species across the galaxy." Admiral Wright felt a chill run down her spine. "We are hardly primitive," she said. "We have colonized Mars and have outposts on several moons in our system." Zelkor made a dismissive gesture with a 4-fingered hand. "You have barely left your cradle. The hegemony spans 27 species across 3,000 star systems. We have existed for 50,000 of your years." The alien tapped a device on its wrist, and a hologram appeared above the table. It showed the complete map of Earth's solar system, with details that surprised even Wright. "We offer you membership in the hegemony as a client species," Zelkor continued. "This is a generous offer. Many species are simply removed when discovered." "And what would this membership entail?" Baker asked, his voice steady despite the implied threat. "You will remain restricted to your solar system. You will cease development of certain technologies. You will provide resources and soldiers when required. In exchange, you receive our protection and limited access to our knowledge." Admiral Wright couldn't believe what she was hearing. "That sounds like surrender, not membership." Zelkor turned those yellow eyes on her. "It is survival. You have 2 Earth months to decide. Choose wisely." With that, the alien turned and left the room, its guards following silently. As government officials erupted into arguments, Dr. Lucy Davis sat quietly in the back of the room. She was 35, with curly red hair and a brilliant mind that had revolutionized quantum physics. During the entire meeting, she had been recording everything with a special camera hidden in her glasses. She had noticed things about the aliens' technology that others had missed. Later that night, in her lab beneath MIT, Lucy reviewed the footage. The alien's wrist device, the material of its clothing, even the way light bent slightly around it, all these things told a story to someone who knew how to read it. "Their tech is advanced," she muttered to herself, "but not magical. There are principles at work here that we can understand." As world leaders debated whether to accept the hegemony's terms, Lucy began working. She didn't need anyone's permission to start figuring out the science behind what she had seen. Far above Earth, Zelkor watched the planet through a viewing portal on the hegemony ship. Another alien joined him. "Will they accept our terms?" the second alien asked. "They will have no choice," Zelkor replied. "They are just another primitive species, like all the others." How wrong he was. 1 month after first contact, John Harper found himself aboard the hegemony's assessment vessel. The ship was bigger inside than it looked from the outside. The walls glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to come from nowhere. The air smelled like cinnamon and metal. John was a scientist who specialized in human behavior and psychology. He was 43, with kind eyes and a calm voice that made people trust him. The hegemony had requested specialists from different fields for what they called a standard species assessment. John was one of 12 humans selected. A tall, thin alien with blue skin and 4 arms led the humans through the ship. Unlike Zelkor, this alien looked almost fragile. "I am Vental," the alien said. "I will oversee your assessment. We must understand your species before your world joins the hegemony." John noticed how Vental said before, not if. The decision seemed already made in the alien's mind. The humans were separated and taken to different rooms. John's room had a chair that adjusted to his body and a screen that filled one wall. For hours, Vental showed him images of human history and asked questions. Why did humans fight so many wars? How did they advance so quickly from primitive tools to space travel? Why did they both compete and cooperate? The questions were endless. "Your species is unusual," Vental said. "Most take twice as long to develop your level of technology." "We're adaptable," John replied. "It's our greatest strength." Vental made a noise that might have been a laugh. "Adaptability is common. What is uncommon is your speed. It concerns some in the hegemony." John watched the alien carefully. "Are we considered dangerous?" "All new species are potentially dangerous. That is why we assess. That is why we guide." As the days passed, John began to realize something important. The hegemony was underestimating humans. They saw humanity's violent history and assumed humans were simple savages. They noted human cooperation but dismissed it as primitive pack behavior. They registered human creativity but categorized it as random luck. They were making a mistake. Back on Earth, Dr. Lucy Davis had made progress. In her underground lab, she had built a small device based on what she observed from the alien technology. It was a simple energy converter that worked on principles similar to the aliens' devices. "It works," she said to Admiral Wright, who had come to see her progress. The small device hummed and glowed with a blue light. "Can we use this?" Wright asked. Her face was tired. The world's governments were still arguing about the hegemony's terms. "Not yet," Lucy replied. "But it proves something important. Their technology isn't magic. It follows rules we can understand. Given time, we can adapt it." Wright nodded slowly. "How much time?" Lucy shrugged. "Months, maybe years. But that's the thing about humans. When we need to, we work fast." On the hegemony ship, the assessment was concluding. John and the other humans were gathered in a large room where 3 different alien species watched them from a raised platform. "We have completed our evaluation," Vental announced. "Humans are classified as a Class 3 species, potentially dangerous but manageable with firm guidance." John noticed the dismissive tone. "What does that mean for Earth?" "It means you require supervision. Your military capabilities will be limited more strictly than initially proposed. Your expansion will be restricted to your planet and its moon only." The terms were getting worse. John looked at his fellow humans and saw the same worry in their eyes. Later, as they prepared to return to Earth, John whispered to the others, "They think they know us, but they don't. They see our history of violence, but miss our capacity for innovation. They note our conflicts but ignore how quickly we unite when threatened." "What can we do?" asked a biologist named Ellen. John looked out a viewport at Earth, blue and beautiful below them. "We prepare. We adapt. We do what humans have always done when backed into a corner. Which is, we surprise everyone, including ourselves." 6 months after first contact, the hegemony returned with their answer. No one had to ask what it was. The 5 massive warships that joined the original vessel in Earth's orbit made it clear. Admiral Wright stood in the Oval Office along with Secretary General Baker and other world leaders. They watched on screens as Zelkor's ship landed at the United Nations Plaza in New York. This time, he brought 20 armed guards. "They're showing their strength," Wright said. "They want us to feel small." Baker nodded. "We need time. Are your people ready?" Wright thought of the secret base she had established on Europa, Jupiter's moon. "Project Defiance is underway, but we need months, not days." On the screen, Zelkor entered the UN building without waiting for an escort. The meeting was short and to the point. Zelkor did not sit down. The reptilian alien stood tall and spoke firmly. "The assessment is complete. Your species requires stronger guidance than we initially calculated. You will disarm completely. All military forces will be disbanded. All weapons above personal defense level will be destroyed." Baker stepped forward. "That wasn't part of your original terms. We cannot accept." "You misunderstand," Zelkor interrupted. "This is not a negotiation. The hegemony has made its decision. You have 1 Earth year to comply, or we will enforce compliance." After the alien left, Earth's leaders argued long into the night. Some wanted to fight immediately. Others wanted to pretend to agree while secretly preparing. In the end, they chose to appear cooperative, while Admiral Wright's Project Defiance continued in secret. 2 weeks later, a hegemony inspection team arrived to check Earth's progress. Their leader was a stern alien named Gaxmore, who had scales like Zelkor, but was shorter and stockier. "I will inspect your military installations to ensure you are following disarmament protocols," Gaxmore announced. Admiral Wright herself led the inspection of the North American Defense Command. They showed Gaxmore outdated facilities and weapons that were being decommissioned. "Your species seems surprisingly compliant," Gaxmore said as they walked through an empty missile silo. "The assessment suggested you would be more resistant." Wright smiled politely. "We understand our place in the galaxy now." But Gaxmore was not entirely convinced. At a naval base in San Diego, he watched human engineers taking apart a submarine. "What is that man doing?" he asked, pointing to a human working on some electronic equipment. "Standard decommissioning," Wright said quickly. Too quickly. Gaxmore walked over to the man, who looked up nervously. His name was Steve Mason, an electronics engineer who specialized in communication systems. "Explain your work," Gaxmore demanded. Steve was 32, with clever hands and an even cleverer mind. He looked at the alien calmly. "I'm removing the sonar array's primary detection grid. Standard procedure." Gaxmore studied the equipment. "This is not a weapon system." "No," Steve agreed. "It's for detecting things underwater." "Useless now, right?" The alien stared at him for a long moment, then moved on. Steve caught Wright's eye and gave her a tiny nod. What he was actually working on was much more important, a way to mask energy signatures from hegemony sensors. Later that night, Admiral Wright met with Steve in a secure room deep underground. "Can you do it?" she asked. Steve nodded. "Their sensors work on principles similar to our quantum detection systems, just more advanced. I can create a mask that makes energy signatures look like background radiation. It won't fool them up close, but at a distance, like, say, Jupiter's moon distance, they won't see a thing." "How long?" 2 months for a working prototype. 6 for full implementation. Wright thought about the hegemony's 1-year deadline. "Make it 4 months." Steve grinned. "Yes, Mom." On the hegemony command ship, Gaxmore reported to Zelkor. "The humans appear to be complying, but something feels wrong. They are too accepting." Zelkor dismissed his concerns. "They recognize superior power when they see it. Continue the inspections. If they are hiding anything, we will find it." But even as he spoke, Project Defiance grew stronger, hidden beneath the icy surface of Europa. Far from alien eyes, 6 months into the hegemony's 1-year deadline, Earth looked like a planet in surrender. Military bases were quiet. Weapons were being dismantled. Soldiers trained less and less. Hegemony officials walked freely through government buildings and military installations. But it was all a carefully crafted illusion. Admiral Wright sat in a small office that looked like it belonged to a minor official. Her real command center was now on Europa, hidden beneath miles of ice. On her screen was Olivia Grant, one of the richest women on Earth. At 58, Olivia had built the largest shipbuilding company in the world. "How many ships have you converted?" Wright asked quietly. Olivia checked something off-screen. 47 cargo vessels now have hidden weapon mounts and reinforced hulls. They look normal, but they can be combat-ready in hours. The hegemony inspectors. They check the manifests, walk through the yards, and leave. They don't understand human ships well enough to spot the changes. Wright nodded. "Good, keep going." When the call ended, Wright pressed a button hidden under her desk. The ordinary-looking office transformed. Walls slid away to reveal screens and control panels. This was one of many hidden command posts scattered around Earth. On the main screen appeared Dr. Lucy Davis, now working from the Europa base. "Admiral, we've had a breakthrough," Lucy said, her face tired but excited. "We've reverse-engineered their shield technology. It's based on energy displacement, not energy absorption like our previous attempts. Will it work against their weapons? Better than work. It will reflect 70% of their energy weapons back at them." Wright smiled for the first time in months. "How soon can we implement it?" "We're already installing the first systems on the Europa defense grid. Steve's masking technology is keeping it hidden from their sensors." Out in the Kuiper Belt, beyond Neptune, human activity was also hidden from hegemony eyes. Small, fast ships ferried people and supplies to newly established colonies on distant asteroids and dwarf planets. If Earth fell, humanity would survive. On Earth itself, most people knew nothing about these preparations. They only knew that alien officials now supervise many aspects of daily life. Hegemony oversight officials had been placed in major human institutions, government offices, universities, media organizations. In Washington, D.C., Secretary General Baker met with Zelkor for what had become a weekly progress report. "Weapon decommissioning is at 78%, Baker reported, showing charts and graphs. "Military personnel have been reduced by 65%. Zelkor nodded, his reptilian eyes showing satisfaction. "The hegemony is pleased with your progress. We may consider allowing Earth to keep a small defense force for internal security." "That would be appreciated," Baker said, acting grateful for this small concession. As he left the meeting, Baker passed a coded message to his aide. "Tell Wright that Phase 2 is cleared." Phase 2 was the most dangerous part of the plan. With the hegemony now confident in Earth's compliance, they had reduced their military presence in the Sol system. 3 of their 5 warships had departed 2 weeks ago, leaving only 2 to oversee Earth. This was the opportunity Wright had been waiting for. On Europa, final preparations were underway. Lucy's shield technology had been installed on 100 hidden vessels. Steve Mason had developed not just masking technology, but also a system that could temporarily blind hegemony sensors altogether. "We'll only get one chance at surprise," Wright told her officers in the ice-hidden base. "Once we move, they'll call for reinforcements." Colonel Alan Reeves, her second-in-command, studied the tactical display. "How long do we have between our first strike and their reinforcements arriving?" "Based on their ship movements, between 72 and 96 hours." Alan nodded grimly. "Then we need to make those hours count." Far above them, the hegemony ships orbited Earth, their crews relaxed and confident in their dominance over the supposedly surrendering humans. They had no idea what was coming. The research vessel Marie Curie drifted slowly near Mars. It was small, with just 47 scientists and crew members on board. They were studying the long-term effects of Martian dust storms on the colony habitats. At least, that's what their official mission statement said. In reality, they were mapping hegemony patrol routes and testing new sensor equipment developed by Dr. Lucy Davis. Captain Frank Miller watched the stars through the main viewport. He was 50, with gray hair and steady hands that had guided ships through the solar system for 30 years. "Sir," his first officer called, "we're picking up a hegemony patrol ship approaching from the direction of Phobos." Miller nodded calmly. "Standard procedure. Send the approved greeting and our mission profile." The message was sent, but the hegemony ship didn't respond. Instead, it accelerated toward them. "They're charging weapons," the sensor officer reported, voice rising with alarm. Miller grabbed the comm. "Hegemony vessel, this is the research ship Mary Curie. We are on an approved mission. Please respond." The only response was a blast of energy that rocked the small research vessel. "Shields failing," someone shouted. Miller tried again. "We are a civilian research vessel. We are unarmed." The second blast tore through the ship's hull. Air rushed out into space. Emergency doors slammed shut, but it was too late for many crew members. Miller watched in horror as his people died around him. The hegemony ship fired twice more, methodically breaking the human vessel apart. Then it moved away, leaving the wreckage and bodies to drift in space. 12 hours later, news of the attack reached Earth. The hegemony released a brief statement. An unauthorized human vessel was intercepted and neutralized for violating travel restrictions. The incident is regrettable but necessary to maintain order. All 47 humans aboard the Mary Curie were dead. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Protests erupted in cities around the world. People who had quietly accepted the hegemony's presence now demanded action. They filled streets and squares, carrying pictures of the dead scientists and signs calling for justice. In Washington, Secretary General Baker addressed the world from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. His voice shook with carefully controlled anger. "Today we mourn 47 innocent people whose only crime was seeking knowledge. This unprovoked attack cannot stand. We demand the hegemony provide full reparations to the families of the victims and punish those responsible." Zelkor dismissed Baker's speech as client species insolence. In a brief statement, the reptilian diplomat said, "The vessel was in a restricted area. The patrol ship followed standard protocol. The matter is closed." In her hidden command center, Admiral Wright watched the protests spreading across Earth. Her aide brought her the latest intelligence. "The hegemony patrol ships have increased their presence in Mars orbit, but they haven't changed their patrol patterns elsewhere," he reported. Wright nodded. "They think this is just about angry words and protests. They have no idea." She pressed a button on her console. "Activate Project Defiance. Authorization code, Wright, Alpha 70. Execute Phase 3. Throughout the solar system, hidden human ships powered up their engines. On Europa, bay doors concealed by ice slid open, revealing a fleet of warships equipped with Lucy's shield technology. At hidden bases on asteroids and moons, weapons that had been developed in secret were brought online. In his workshop on Earth, Steve Mason activated the system he had spent months perfecting. Across the solar system, hegemony sensors suddenly showed nothing but background noise where human activities should be visible. "What's happening?" Gaxmore demanded as screens on the hegemony command ship went blank. "Where are these energy signatures coming from?" Before anyone could answer, alarms blared throughout the ship. The tactical officer looked up in shock. "Multiple unknown vessels approaching from all directions. They're not in our database." Gaxmore rushed to the command deck. Through the viewports, he could see ships appearing seemingly out of nowhere. Human ships, but unlike any he had seen before. And they were heading straight for the 2 hegemony warships, with weapons charged. The human fleet struck with perfect coordination. 100 ships appeared around the 2 hegemony warships, firing weapons that the aliens had never seen before. Admiral Wright commanded from her flagship, the Defiance, a vessel built in secret beneath Europa's ice. "Target the propulsion systems first," she ordered. Then communications. The hegemony ships tried to raise their shields, but they were too slow. Human vessels, smaller and more agile, darted around them like angry bees around 2 bears. The shields on Wright's ships glowed blue as they absorbed and reflected enemy fire. On the lead hegemony warship, Gax Moore watched in disbelief as human weapons cut through their defenses. "Impossible," he said. "Their technology is primitive. They have no weapons that can harm us." His tactical officer looked up from a damaged console. "Sir, they're using modified versions of our own technology. The energy signatures are similar to our shield systems, but reconfigured to be weapons." Gaxamore slammed his fist on the command chair. "Send a distress signal to the hegemony fleet. We need reinforcements." "Communications are down," came the reply. "We can't reach anyone outside this system." Outside, the battle continued. Human ships moved in careful formation, protecting each other while focusing fire on key systems of the hegemony vessels. Dr. Lucy Davis had identified the most vulnerable points in their design. After 20 minutes of intense fighting, the smaller hegemony vessel exploded in a ball of bright energy. The command ship was crippled, drifting with its engines dark. Admiral Wright gave her next order. "Boarding teams, prepare to deploy. I want Gaxamore alive." 5 human ships attached themselves to the hegemony command vessel. Marines in special armor cut through the hull and entered the alien ship. They moved quickly through corridors filled with smoke and confused alien crew members. Colonel Alan Reeves led the team heading for the command deck. The Marines had trained for months for this moment, using simulations based on John Harper's observations during his time on the hegemony assessment vessel. "Remember, stun weapons only," Reeves told his team. "We want prisoners, not bodies." When they reached the command deck, they found Gaxamore and 20 other aliens trying desperately to restart their systems. The aliens reached for weapons, but the humans were faster. Stun blasts filled the room, and the aliens fell unconscious one by one. Gaxamore was the last one standing. He faced Colonel Reeves with his hands raised. "How?" the alien asked simply. "How did you develop these technologies so quickly?" Reeves smiled behind his helmet. "You underestimated us. That's a common mistake with humans." Within an hour, the hegemony command ship was under human control. Admiral Wright arrived on the bridge to find Gaxamore secured but conscious. She stood before him, her uniform crisp and her eyes hard. 47 innocent people died," she said. "People who were just doing research." Gaxamore looked away. "It was standard protocol for dealing with client species violations." "We are not your clients," Wright said coldly. "We never agreed to your terms." She turned to her communications officer. "Send the message." Throughout the solar system, on every frequency that could reach beyond its boundaries, a message broadcast in all known hegemony languages. Secretary General Baker's face appeared on screens everywhere. "To the Galactic Hegemony. Humanity rejects your offer of membership. We reject your restrictions. We reject your authority. Earth and the Sol system are sovereign space. Any further aggression will be met with the full force of human resistance." The message included images of the destroyed hegemony warship and the captured command vessel. In a cell on his own ship, Gaxamore watched the message with growing horror. When it ended, Wright stood before him again. "Your reinforcements will come," she said. "We know that, but they should know something important." "What?" Gaxamore asked. "In the time it takes them to arrive, we'll have learned even more from your ship, your technology, your weaknesses." For the first time in his long life, Gaxamore felt afraid of a supposedly primitive species. 3 months after humanity's first strike, the hegemony's response arrived. 12 massive warships jumped into the solar system, their weapons charged and ready. They expected to find a rebellious planet ready to be punished. Instead, they found a transformed solar system. A network of defense platforms orbited Earth, built using technology from the captured hegemony ship. The human fleet had grown to over 300 vessels, each equipped with improved shields and weapons. Admiral Wright had used the time well. From the bridge of the Defiance, she watched the hegemony fleet arrive. "They brought exactly the number of ships we expected," she said to Colonel Reeves. "They still think we're just an annoying primitive species." In the 3 months since the first battle, Dr. Lucy Davis had made incredible breakthroughs. Using the captured ship's database, she had improved the shield technology even further and developed new weapons that could pierce hegemony defenses. The hegemony fleet commander, a high-ranking reptilian named HFY, sent a simple message: "Surrender immediately or be destroyed. This is your only warning." Secretary General Baker stood on the United Nations platform, now reinforced with shield technology, and delivered humanity's response: live to the solar system and beyond. We will not surrender. We will not bow. Humanity stands free. The hegemony opened fire immediately. Energy beams lashed out toward Earth, but they never reached their target. The defense grid absorbed and redirected the energy, sending it harmlessly into space. "Launch all ships," Admiral Wright ordered. "Execute Battle Plan Delta." The human fleet moved with precision that surprised the hegemony commanders. Ships darted in and out of formation, striking at the alien vessels before pulling back. The battle spread across the space around Earth. On several hegemony ships, systems suddenly failed. Lights went out, weapons powered down, and engines stopped. Steve Mason's work had paid off. His team had developed electronic warfare systems that could penetrate hegemony computers and shut them down from within. HFY watched in growing horror as his mighty fleet was systematically dismantled by ships that should have been easy to destroy. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. They were nothing just a year ago. As the battle raged near Earth, something unexpected happened elsewhere in the galaxy. On 7 different worlds under hegemony control, subject species rose up against their masters. They had seen Earth's message of defiance, and it had sparked hope. Ambassador Ryan Collins, who had been quietly meeting with representatives of these species, now stood on the bridge of a diplomatic vessel at the edge of the solar system. On his screen were leaders from species who had been under hegemony rule for centuries. "Earth stands with you all," he told them. "The time of the hegemony's absolute rule is over." The battle at Earth lasted just 6 hours. When it ended, 9 hegemony ships were destroyed or captured. The remaining 3 retreated, jumping away to report back to their homeworld. 1 month later, representatives from 24 species gathered in the Great Hall of the United Nations on Earth. Some were former hegemony members. Others were independent worlds that had stayed hidden from the hegemony's reach. All had come to form something new. Admiral Wright, Dr. Lucy Davis, Steve Mason, and Ambassador Collins sat with Secretary General Baker as the new Galactic Charter was signed. It established the Free Systems Alliance, a coalition of equals where no species could rule over another. Gax Moore, now a prisoner who had provided valuable information, watched from a secure area. Baker noticed him and walked over. "Did you ever wonder why we adapted so quickly?" Baker asked. Gax Moore looked up. "Your species is unusually creative. We should have seen that." Baker shook his head. "It's simpler than that. Throughout our history, whenever someone told humans they couldn't do something, or shouldn't have something, it became the very thing we worked hardest to achieve." As Baker walked away, Gax Moore finally understood the hegemony's fatal mistake. They hadn't just challenged a species with technology. They had challenged the very nature of humanity itself. In the Great Hall, the representatives of 24 worlds stood together as equals, proving once and for all that the Galactic Empire had challenged humanity, and it hadn't ended well for them at all.